Hey, West Coast.
Hey, East Coast, what's up?
We're okay. I'm the solo East Coaster. The other East Coaster is baseball.
The home office is kind of quiet then.
You got half an East Coast and one West Coast, so that's fine.
Well, what we watch when we drink will go on.
We're going to do it, and we're going to pour one out for our homie.
Like he cares.
He absolutely cares.
He won't even listen to this thing afterwards. Let's be honest.
Sure he will, because he's got to mock me, so he's going to have to listen. But anyway, I got some questions for you. Do you like cocktails?
I do.
Do you like to travel?
I do.
I mean, granted, we can't do any of that right now, but we can dream, and even better, we can plan.
Planning is good, and we have the perfect mates for planning.
Yes, we do. They love to do that. They're Yelp and Yelp 2. As opposed to Thing 1 and Thing 2, we got Yelp and Yelp 2.
Yes.
So anyhow, we have a special guest. I'm not going to reveal it yet because you know what we're going to do?
What?
We're going to roll the intro.
Let's
roll
do
the
it.
intro.
Do it.
Welcome to What We Watch When We Drink, a booze dancing media podcast featuring lively discussions about movies, TV shows, and anything else that we're watching while we drink our favorite boozy libations. If you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever else you get your podcasts. And you can find us on boozdancing.com. And if you like this podcast and would like to offer up some topic suggestions, by all means, email us at boozdancing@gmail.com. So, like I was saying, Mr. West Coast.
Yes, sir.
You like your cocktails.
Like my cocktails.
You like books.
Love the books.
How many vinyl records do you have in storage?
Well, they're not in storage. They're in my office. There's like 1,500.
1,500? Okay. Well, our special guest can cover all these topics and then some.
I like that idea.
Let's bring him in.
Who's
our
guest?
Let's bring him in. Our guest is Andre Darlington, author of Booze and Vinyl, and his brand new book, Booze Cruise, a tour of the world's essential mixed drinks. I like him already.
I really like him.
I like him already. All right,
words, whiskey, words, and music and cocktails. This is good.
I like it. Andre, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk to you guys.
We're fans. We like your stuff. We like what you're doing, and we've been dying to talk to you for a while now.
Oh,
so now we've got the opportunity.
I am excited. Yeah.
So you are where right now?
I'm in Philadelphia. So
my hometown.
Philly. Yeah.
I'm right across the river.
All right. I'm waving with my whiskey.
Let's talk whiskey.
What are you drinking?
I am drinking this Lindores Abbey Aqua Vitae, which I picked up in England because it's one of those wacky things I couldn't resist in the store. Supposedly, they found kind of an old recipe from the 1400s of what whiskey or usquebaugh was originally. So it's whiskey, but very herbaceous. So it's this ancient Abbey recipe. And sometimes these things are sort of cliche or not that great, but I find this to be a really fantastic product. And they don't pay me to say that. So,
but if they want to pay you, they can find you
if they want
somewhere.
To pay me, call 1-800 now.
Hey, Andre.
I think that is a relatively new distillery too.
It is. I think it's in the last couple of years. I just before I got on the plane, I was at a market in another part of London at a really great little shop. And I just asked the guy, which is always the right move, right? Ask the guy, like, what should I get? And he loaded me up with a few things. And this was one of them. And it's really quite fun.
I am actually having a sort of a Negroni variation. I took your recipe from Booze and Vinyl, the one you did with the tequila.
Yeah.
I kind of went like, but I didn't use tequila though. I used Ginquila by a little distillery outside of Chicago called Skeptic Distillery.
Okay, awesome.
And it's pretty neat. They take gin and then they put it in a tequila barrel and then they do like all kinds of like fruits and all these other weird things in it. But it's really nice. So I went with your formula. I went with the 1.5 ounces of the Ginquila.
Okay.
3/4 of an ounce of Punta Mess and 3/4 of an ounce of Campari.
Oh, nice. Is it good?
It's very good. I like it.
A little laddered Negroni. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. And then, and a little bit of orange, a little orange wedge. So
awesome.
And I
have
12-year-old Yamazaki. I think it's a travel kind of, geographical thing. So
yeah, we're in Scotland, Italy, and Japan. So
and Chicago.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers,
Andre. Let's talk about your book. When's it coming out? It must be soon, right?
The book comes out, it was originally coming out in April, but the whole publishing industry has kind of been put back a little bit. There was terrible weather in Asia and with COVID. So the book comes out May 4th now. So not too much of a delay.
Okay.
So yeah, May 4th, everywhere books are sold. Independents have had such a hard winter. So I always encourage people you can go to any independent, any website and just ask them to carry the book and they'll get it for you. But otherwise, Amazon is the gorilla in the room.
It's the $15 billion gorilla.
Yes, exactly.
Or whatever it's worth.
You might be a little bit light.
I might be.
Here's a cover of the book. I've been really lucky. So this is my 4th book. I have another one coming out this year on a different press. But otherwise, I've always worked with Running Press, which is a part of Hachette out of France. And I've been really lucky in that I've worked with the same graphic designer, the same photographer, the same stylist for all of the books, which is just crazy because this started in 2016 was my first book, and we were sort of all newbies at it a little bit. And so 4 books later, things are looking really good.
That's great.
I was going to get to that, but
so was I, because
I think
because I'm really
the style of
intrigued.
it is just great. The look of it, the layout is just amazing.
The graphic designer, Josh, is some kind of genius. And then I think Jason Varney is one of the great cocktail photographers. And cocktails are hard to shoot because it's a
reflections
liquid.
And glass.
Reflections. They cannot be exciting. You want to style them out, but you don't want them to look cliche. They're just really tricky. And I try to do them at home just for my own internet, for my own Instagram and social media. And I'm like, this is way harder than it looks. And I've been doing it for a while, trying to do it on amateur. And they do a really good job. And, as a writer, it's a little bit like making a movie where I go in and I have the script and then they see it and kind of interpret it. And I've been lucky to be at the shoots, which I think is sometimes unusual, that the author is at the shoots, and that's been really amazing. But basically, they've taken my words and made magic out of it. So they're really fun. They work as really fun coffee table books and kind of inspiration books on top of
and that's how I view both books. To me, it's like I was before you came on. I was talking to Aaron, and we were saying it's like if you go to a bar, like a Spanish tapas bar, kind of, and just how the menu's designed, or even like a dim sum, where you're just trying little bits of everything, and eventually just kind of finding what you like or what interests you. And that's kind of how I feel the book is. It's like a jumping off point to everything, whether it's drinking, travel, or just good conversation. Yeah.
So I came out with a book in 2016 called The New Cocktail Hour. That's sort of history. It runs in alphabetical order. It's pretty nerdy. I'm sorry, not alphabetical order, but sort of in historical order, starting at the beginning of the cocktail story and taking people through up to modern times. It puts in modern classics. It's pretty heavy and nerdy as far as the books go. And then I had a book called Movie Night Menus, which I did with Turner Classic Movies, where we were pairing food and drink that were in movies and trying to pull them out so people could kind of style out a night for themselves or an experience for themselves with the movies. So that was movies. And then I did Booze and Vinyl, which was music. And then this one is travel. So, and this one was by far the hardest. And of course had the shortest amount of time and the smallest budget, because that's how life is.
So when did the concept for this one come up for you?
It was pre-pandemic, and this is I have an incredible editor I've worked with on these books, and I had pitched, I think, a couple other things. I'm always sort of pitching ideas. Let's do this. I mean, my dream book is to have a book where I go downstairs in my slippers, open the pantry door, and make cocktails, right? I don't have to do anything. I don't have to travel. I don't have to research. I can just put marmalade and drinks and be like, you should sell this book. It's called Andre's Pantry, where he's wearing a robe, and he's making drinks. But that's never what I get.
Why the hell not? Why the hell not?
What won't sell anymore, right?
How's this? Andre's Pantry, the post-pandemic Bible.
Oh, exactly. That's good.
What's funny is somebody is coming out with a pantry cocktail.
Of course they are.
I pitched that.
That was my pantry idea.
Exactly. So, of course, I get the exact opposite thing back. Like, oh, we love your voice. We love this idea. Why don't you go around the world, though? You know, I've been doing this for a number of years and have traveled to quite a few cities, but nothing like the whole globe. So the idea, I think, was hatched really early 2019. And basically, I was on a plane that fall, and I went around the world 65 days, and I came back in very early March. I slid into home base, and I called my editor, and I was like, what kind of crystal ball were you looking into? I mean, it was unbelievable. And I literally slid into home base, finished the book, and the pandemic got worse and worse and worse. And we thought, oh, well, this is actually, I mean, it's really hard to push a book right now because bookstores are not happening and all that. But as far as timing goes, people are dying to travel. The other thing that is interesting about the story is that the last time that somebody, we think, deliberately went around the world to drink was a man named Charles H. Baker Jr., who went around 3 times. He was a writer for a number of famous American magazines, married an heiress, and used that to go circumnavigate the world with her in the late 20s and 30s 3 times. And he wrote a book called The Gentleman's Companion, which is an eerie book because he did it between the 2 wars. So what he saw was this time capsule. And I came back and I was thinking, you know, this craft cocktail revolution has exploded around the world. It's been going for the last 5 years. This is this magic moment to drink in the world. This is fantastic. I'm going to share this with everybody. And then the pandemic happened. And I thought, wow, this book is going to have really eerie similarities because it was this height of this craft cocktail boom that was happening globally. And then the pandemic came and we don't know what is going to be still there when it ends. It's the first book of its kind in 100 years and has really, really strange similarities between the 20s of 100 years ago and the 20s of now. That was war. This is pandemic. But it was a bizarre experience.
Do you think that cocktails and what people are drinking will change after all this? What's gonna be the result of this for people's habits?
It could change a little bit. I've seen the market bifurcating a little bit anyway, back into sort of tavern rough and ready drinks where we just want to hang out. And Asia has been headed for some time into this very experiential drink situation, almost like a 5-course French meal sort of thing where you sign up and you get a reservation and you are going on a cocktail journey. And I think we might see more of that after the pandemic, just because people will say to themselves, well, if I'm going out, I'm going to go big and I'm going to go for this big experience. So we may see some of that. Unfortunately, I've seen that a lot of the rest of the world might be more resilient than the United States. Right before I published the book, I had to go through and comb through for bars that had closed that I mentioned. And, you know, I cut about 1/3 of the bars that were mentioned in the United States.
I wondered about that.
Yeah. So New York and Chicago, you know, just because of the climate, you know, cold climate has not done well. Asia has done a good job of holding on. I think everybody's worried about Hong Kong between the riots and, you know, being taken over by China and repeated sort of pandemic issues. I know right now, I was just talking to somebody last night, actually, that I think they have a curfew of like 7 or 8 o'clock at night again. And that's really tough on bars. You know, bars make all their money after 10 o'clock by all of us getting drunk and getting kind of excited and starting to over tip and have 2 drinks too many. That's how bars make
That's right.
So if you shut it down right when that starts to happen, it's like, oh man, I just got everybody dressed and at work and now we're closed again.
I wonder if, I'm thinking of my own household, everyone being home for a year and decided to, hey, I can make craft cocktails at home.
Yeah.
And people experimented. The cocktails to go, having alcohol delivered to your homes. People got a little more experimental.
Yep.
I wonder if that will continue at home, and whether that, for folks that weren't doing that before or were not into cocktails, will it lead them to go to bars to see what a professional cocktail is made. Or travel out away.
I think that's an astute observation and prediction because I think that's exactly what's going to happen, and I'm really hopeful about it. I'm just old enough to remember when the craft cocktail boom happened the first time in the early 2000s. And before that, in the late 90s, it was really, people forget that there were a lot of people on the internet and on internet chats and internet boards kind of talking about craft cocktails. And those people, helped those bars start. And we had a really high level of consumer in the early 2000s when craft cocktails first came through the United States. And I think that since the pandemic that everybody's been at home, educating themselves more, getting good bottles of liquor, some of them for the first time, a lot of people getting their first cocktail book for the first time, that we're going to see a higher level of consumer when we open up. And I'm really hopeful. I do think we're going to have a couple really good years where we have a whole new generation of nerds that have been turned on to this because we're drinking a cocktail every night, folks. It's the pandemic.
I also think that there's probably a pent-up amount of energy from bartenders.
Absolutely.
They've been sitting around, probably unemployed, waiting around.
Yeah.
And now get them behind the bar, get them back in the saddle, and let them
these
go.
Are people, the bartenders are these people. They love people. And I got into this industry a lot because I love people. I mean, I think we're all like, we don't like people, but we do like people at the bars that we like, right?
Right.
But, and it's finding community again. And I think people will be jumping out into these bars and finding community in a way that maybe we haven't seen. And we might have kind of a roaring 20s in bars and just the creativity and the pent up demand.
Minus the prohibition piece.
Yes. Yeah. Although, there is a really heavy NA situation that's continually being marketed. And I don't want to get into it too much because it's contentious, but I do feel like it's sort of a neo-prohibition, can turn into a neo-prohibition.
Yeah.
I owned a bar. I have been very, on the forefront of thou shalt have non-alcoholic cocktails. Thou shalt have non-alcoholic options for drinkers. And that time has come. And many bars across the country have adopted that. But there is an added element of a lot of companies that have been producing non-alcoholic, whatever they call themselves. And people have really jumped on this bandwagon. And it's been interesting because in the media, it sounds like all these people are quitting drinking. But if you look at the statistics, people are drinking more cocktails than ever before. So there's kind of a marketing bifurcation. But there's always that crowd that wants us all to stop drinking. So we do need to be careful of that.
The numbers have pointed, I think we've seen from the medical industry that there is more cases of liver issues in those last 12 months.
Yeah.
Because more people are drinking more since we've been stuck at home.
Yeah.
So I think there's going to be, and that's the anti-moderation stance that people took at home because you're home. What are you going to do?
It's tough. And I don't want to, belittle in any way. It's really tough. No. Everyone in the industry has, they're running with the issue and they have to solve the problem for themselves. And we all go through it. I do think that, for bars and bartenders right now, it's important that we all talk about moderation and it's okay to go back to a bar, whether you drink or not, because it's for a community thing.
So you were a bar owner. Where were you a bar owner at?
I owned a bar and restaurant in Madison, Wisconsin, of all places.
Hey, Ange knows Madison.
Yes. Yeah.
So where are you from originally?
I actually grew up and did high school in Iowa.
Okay.
And then was in Madison. I went to Grinnell in Iowa. Moved up to Wisconsin. My mother's still there. And then have lived on the East Coast, spent a good amount of time to Los Angeles, lost a girlfriend to Los Angeles, so I was there quite a bit. And some time in New York and then Philadelphia here.
Now, your sister wrote the last book with you, right?
Yeah, the last three, actually. So this is
it Tenaya or Tenaya?
Tenaya, yep.
Tenaya.
She finally dumped you, huh?
Yeah, so it was funny. We wrote the Booze and Vinyl, and her first passion is cheese.
Yes, Madame Fromage.
Yeah, so she is sort of this cheese impresario, and got a cheese book deal. Then I ended up getting this booze deal. So it's just how it happened.
That's great.
There's got to be a cheese booze pairing book coming out.
Absolutely. Why not?
Yeah, what's really funny is this whole thing started because I was a wine writer at the time, and we pitched a cheese and wine book like 8 years ago. And the press came back and was like, "We love you guys. We love you writing together. But would you give us a cocktail book instead of what you pitched?" I mean, this is just how the industry is, Yeah. And I had actually had a cocktail column, and so I was like, "Let's do it." So, and it was an amazing. I mean, we had a really great run. Not that it's over, but we had it's so much easier to write with somebody else. And we'd both been journalists at newspapers. We'd both been editors. So it's for us, one of us would start at one end of the book and the other one would start at the other end of the book, kind of, and meet in the middle and kind of cross paths and then edit each other. And like by the end, we couldn't remember who had written what.
That's great.
Yeah, we got lucky. And we're just far enough. So she's 5-6 years older than me. So we're just far enough apart in age. And that it just worked.
Did you travel a lot when you were younger? Obviously in the U.S., but what about foreign travel?
Yeah, so I traveled some, not a lot until after college, actually. But I think the viewpoint is that my mother is Swiss-born, and she came over when I think she was 12. So my dad's American-born, my mother's Swiss-born. So in our house, there was always this foreign element that I grew up with. They were also from the East Coast and moved to the Midwest, which is kind of like moving to a different country.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, so it was kind of always growing up with this sense of cultures created, not inherent, and always kind of this extra eye and a little bit of distance from where you are.
When you were younger, post-college, and you're starting to do some traveling, were you grasping the cultural differences of bars and restaurants as you went from place to place? Did you understand the impact of that?
Yeah, in some ways, yeah. My first obsession was France and Paris, and I've been to Paris the most, and I feel like Paris is a kind of a good lesson because there's a whole language and system to their restaurants that's so different than ours. For this book, I've noticed more differences than I had before between even London and the United States. And just the differences in service. London figures so huge globally as a cocktail, sort of as the cocktail mothership.
Like in what way, though? Like more refined in their approach, or just a little more polished?
More refined and less. It's like it doesn't really add up or translate. I do find that in England, they sort of skipped or fast-forwarded through being a little pretentious and elitist, a little bit in the way that American bars, certainly craft cocktail bars, we had the mustaches and the suspenders and this sort of fearsome, oh, you haven't heard of that drink? And London just doesn't have that. They just don't give a crap. And you still get a lot of classics there. And for us, it's like, oh, yeah, we did that in 2008. We don't need to do that still. And it's like, no, you guys, there's always a new generation finding Manhattans, and they need to have a good one. There's always a new generation finding penicillins. I know you might be bored with it, but just stick it on the menu. Tell kids about it.
And there's a reason these things are classics.
Exactly. And I find that they're not afraid of the classics in quite the same way. But also, there's just other interesting differences going around the world. A lot of the Commonwealth, the bartenders would come from Australia, do their tour of duty in London, and either go back or you just find them in Singapore. They never left. They got lost somewhere in Asia and they're bartending over there.
They went on walkabout.
So I had to take that into much more account of okay, what is the global thing that's happening here between everywhere you go to Bangkok and you go to some speakeasy after you thought that you've, left every gringo you've ever seen. And there's an Italian bartender in the back of the tattoo parlor, what? So now I need to know a little bit more about Italian service and what this guy's up to.
So bartenders are bartenders all over the world. But they're not all the same, right? Because you've got cultural differences.
Although I think they're starting to blend so much because they have such an incredible system. One fascinating cultural story that can be told about this era is the mobility of bartenders. Outside of corporate salespeople, these bartenders have been everywhere, know everyone, are talking on Instagram to Bangkok tonight and Argentina, 5 minutes later. I mean, they're just really hopping around. And it's exciting because you go talk to one and they kind of open up oh, well, if you're going here next, then I have a friend there. And of course I did 2 years in Shanghai, so I know everyone. And
this is just random bartender talk. Tipping around the world. We think of it as just it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But it's not a no-brainer around the world. It's very different in every country, every culture. That must have been interesting, just witnessing the mechanisms of what happens for a consumer in a bar.
I thought of putting some of that in the book, but it started to get like too detailed and tedious. But in my own cheat sheet for going around the world, I was basically like, what's $100 in local currency? What is my hotel in non-Roman alphabet? And and do I tip? Those are like the three things. And you pick up every guidebook, and like it's buried somewhere. And you're like, no, guys, this is really basic. Like this should be at you should be able to open like traveling to Singapore, open page 1. How to say this, and do you tip in this place? Yeah, the world is strange that way. Sometimes I don't know that people ever get offended if you leave them money, other than maybe, I don't know, Paris. But sometimes, the house pays people, you don't leave extra money. Like that's just not the thing. A lot of the world is some strange blend of leaving whatever's left over and 10%. And then the Anglos were like, take everything I have left. Here's 20%. But in the US, maybe 20% is not enough anymore. So, I'll just tip 20 on $5. I don't know.
Isn't it funny? And in this country, on the credit card receipts in a lot of bars, they actually give you the calculation of what the tip should be, right? We make it way easier to get that tip out.
Yeah. For better, for worse, it's part of our culture.
Yeah, it's part of our culture.
Yeah. Personally, I dislike it. It's just you just don't know what to do.
Yeah, it's a strange one. It's been interesting watching the blend of a lot of places are auto-grading during this time, during the pandemic, which I actually appreciate. If you're putting, you've got to pay your employees and you've got PPE and you put up an extra. I don't know. These people have these like elaborate like huts that are outside and all this stuff. Like just auto-grad. It's because auto-grad catches the idiots that aren't tipping. So just auto-grad, and then the rest of us can add a little bit more. And a lot of the rest of the world seems to have come up with something like that. I notice a lot of auto-gradding of like 10, 12%. And I always feel like that's good because you can walk away and forget your person's taken care of. But you can also throw down an extra $10. And I feel like something in there is the right way to go. I don't know what the answer is. But as we muddle towards the answer, that's a good start.
What do you find as the cultural differences between flagging down a bartender to get a drink?
I always feel like the best bartenders always greet you, even with just an eye glance, to let you know that they've seen you. But a lot of people, don't look for that, or are rowdy or need a drink faster. But in general, you kind of have to wait for staff, which in some places of the world can be tedious because we're used to quick service. In our country, we're like, yep, I'm here. I'm talking to this person for a half hour. Gotta go. I gotta get my train. Or, Americans are just very fast. There's a number of places in the world where they will never bring you your check until you ask, because they think that's rude, that they're trying to move you on. And I'm always like, what is going on? I just want to get out of here. Let's close this deal. Like, they sold me what they wanted to sell me, and now I just can't find them. They won't get back to me. And it's like, no, you just got to ask. So it's funny. Probably never wave down a bartender to get a drink, but in some places, wave at a bartender to get your bill.
I definitely found that the case in Australia.
Yeah.
It was impossible to get the bill.
Yeah.
And they bring the credit card machine to you. Yeah. It's still difficult.
I know.
You just walk by, and they walk right by you, and hey, I'm over. Whoa, come back.
I definitely had some cities where I thought, Anglo style, wow, I'm going to bang out 5 bars tonight, because that's how we roll, right? You go into a city and you're like, I'm going to hit 5 bars tonight. That's reasonable. And then you see how it goes, and you're like, or 2. Any city that's like a large financial center has a pretty good clip. So you go to Hong Kong, you're in and out. You go to, Singapore, Tokyo, stuff like that.
I think you're right. Business centers are a different animal completely, right? It's like fast food. You need to get them in, get them out. Let's turn them over. Get your big bar tab going, and then there's another batch of guys coming in.
And there's more customers too, generally.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. More volume.
People are going out 10, 12 people. It's an after work thing, or it's a business meeting. It spilled over into drinks.
Yeah.
So you just got to keep it rolling.
Speaking of drinks, where are we going?
I guess I'll pour myself a different kind of whiskey.
I am going to go to Israel. I am going to have some of the milk and honey red wine cask.
Nice.
The Malt.
Well, I've been watching the Stanley Tucci show, which we're going to discuss in a bit. Well, not his show, but just travel shows in general. I think, I'm going to go to Fernet.
There you
go.
All right, I'm going South Africa. And I got this great bottle of Caperitif.
What is it?
Kind of an Amaro, technically it's got quinine, so it's bitter. It died out, and from what I understand, a couple people brought it back. And it has a couple famous cocktails from the Savoy cocktail book.
So we, as you may know, Andre, this is a podcast about watching TV and what we drink while we're watching TV.
I think the title's self-explanatory, Aaron.
It is. What's the title?
What we watch when we drink.
There you go.
Yeah.
So we wanted to talk about travel shows tonight.
Yeah.
Since we've got a travel writer here. And in my mind, I think there's travel food shows, and then there's travel non-food shows. So let's talk about travel food shows. There's lots of different places. I have a little list of things that we've all probably seen. Within that category of shows, you've got real food shows. It's only food. Or there's the look at what's going on in the culture where the food is being made. That's where Bourdain, I think, was genius at. And everyone is sort of trying to copy him. No, that's my stepping off point, and we can run through some shows and talk about some. But I think Bourdain's where you have to start.
Bourdain has an outsized influence. It's an interesting place to tread because, I've been at this for quite some time, and I've met with producers for TV shows. And a couple of them, hilariously, have said to me, well, writers, they don't make good TV hosts. And writers are boring. And I just literally sit there and I'm watching this woman eat this donut. And I'm like, Anthony, right? You remember Anthony? And, I think the thing about Anthony was that he was a writer first, and his copy is so unbelievably amazing. And he had such an incredible work ethic, and he really cared about people. And he also had this really great, lovable, curmudgeonly personality that was almost cartoonish, but it was so fantastic. And he was also, in his infinite genius, refused to stand in front of the camera and say, "Welcome to the Taj Mahal." It was all overdubbed, so he had control over every moment other than his interviews, which he also had control over those moments. Mm-hmm. So I've actually rewatched those shows and seen what he did differently that made him so successful. And you really have to be quite educated and good at it to do it at that level. And TV seems consistently unable to choose that person for that role. They want celebrities. And so you get people cosplaying at being food and beverage people. And sometimes they do okay. But the thing with Tony was that he brought gravitas because he could actually get up and, make that cordon bleu if he had to. And, and he also, the American TV, and it's different from British TV still, where British TV, you can be kind of quirky and weird and have bad teeth and people love you. In the United States, you have to look like you got off a 90210 last night, and it's unfortunate that we've gone that way. And I know, people will pitch these scripts for a good show and they're like, yeah, and we chose this, 24-year-old girl from Los Angeles to do it. And you're like, well, there goes that show, because you just have to be educated, I don't see what's so hard about, having an educated person who's put in the time to go in front of the camera. But it's a hard sell. And what's funny too about Tony, when you watch his early shows, he's really terrible, and they gave him time to get better. And I think also there's an unwillingness to realize, somebody could have a show and it just doesn't work. And 2 years later, they could have a show, you try again, and everything clicks. And it works. So it's something about that industry just wanting to get a flash in the pan, follow up. This industry works on somebody has a hit book. We're going to put out this book with almost the same title and see if we can catch its wave. And it's funny. We can segue into Stanley Tucci. Stanley is lovable, and that is super helpful. And I feel like his show is good anyway. He's really doing it.
Well, it's beautiful to watch too. It's absolutely stunning.
Bourdain, I always found fascinating because, like you said, he could cook a 5-star meal, but he also would make hamburgers, right? He would make ramen, and as well as something from a French restaurant.
Yeah.
And he was fine with doing either.
Yeah.
He was fine with being in jeans, and he was fine with being in a tuxedo.
Yeah.
So, and I got the sense that that wasn't an act. That was him.
Right.
He was probably more happy eating at a taco stand than not.
Yeah.
But he could also eat at a 5-star restaurant and understand why it is what it is all over the world.
And he was a master of contextualizing. The opening bit, it'd always be some kind of flashy opening bit, and then his voiceover, which was always a deep, basically Gen X cultural reference, or I think he's a 70s baby, so it was like, all of his shows are always referencing film. He was a huge film buff, and referencing good stuff. Yep. And good authors. And he was contextualizing it, and he wouldn't go too deep, but he really had a handle on it. And I just think contextualizing, just in my book, Booze Cruise, I'm always thinking, how do I contextualize these cocktails? So in my verbiage, I'm always looking for, how do I get people involved here? If you're in Hungary, you've heard of paprikash. Get drunk and make paprikash. Because then you're getting it. Then you're, stand in a kitchen drunk with a bunch of Hungarians drinking, and
here's the question: is it better to make the paprikash first and then get drunk, or to get drunk and then make the paprikash? But I think either way, it tastes great.
Have you ever played darts or pool and you start out really bad, but as you're drinking, you get better? Cooking is like that until you've had the fourth one too many. And then you're burning the pot. But I do think that loosening up and relaxing, you're a better cook.
Yeah, but you know what? Don't try to do a Glenfiddich tasting while you're trying to make a bolognese.
No, that's bad.
That's not good.
Getting a little bit tipsy within some parameters is fantastic for many artistic endeavors.
One of my favorite, last point about Bourdain, one of my favorite cultural parts about himself is he did the show Parts Unknown. Was that the CNN Parts Unknown, right?
Yeah.
And he did the show in Seattle, and he had on, who also does his which I didn't know, the theme song, the theme music was Mark Lanigan, and he had him on the show. And Mark Lanigan's one of my favorite all-time artists. And he's kind of like me. He's except he can cook, and he's just a regular guy down deep. Couple other ones, and somewhat similar and a little more controversial. Bizarre Foods, Andrew Zimmern.
I was always so-so on that one.
I was always so-so. I was more interested in where he went than himself.
Right.
I can think of an Alaska, or was Alaska, northern Canada, somewhere very far north, in an Inuit community. I found fascinating. And I just actually read a very interesting interview with him, actually in a Jewish magazine, a kosher magazine. And he's actually a really interesting guy. Grew up in the Lower East Side. He's Jewish, and he's become this, icon in the food world. Yeah, for better or worse.
He flunked out of some kitchens, I think. I think he had I think he admits this. He had a pretty severe drug problem. Yep. But I think he had worked for Thomas Keller and done a number of stuff and bounced around and ended up in Minneapolis. He's sort of a consummate professional. I sort of hear also, he's not compelling to me in the same way that Tony is, but I also like the movies and the music, and that's just more, and that kind of stuff. And I just really identified with that. But Zimmerman, is he really gets out there. He's bold. He's succinct. He puts on a really good show.
Again, he's also someone who's been in the industry. That gives him a lot of cachet, I think.
Yeah, he's been working his ass off forever, and you gotta love people like that.
I think the word is street cred.
Street cred.
Yeah, it is, right? And that's why Bourdain was looked upon, because he wasn't just a guy who wrote books. He was a guy who had worked in kitchens all over.
But I think the best shows with Bourdain were always when he was kind of with people in the industry, with people that he's worked with, or when he went to Puebla, where all his cooks were from that he worked with in New York.
Amazing show. He was amazing with people. And I think it was from being in kitchens. He really knew how to talk to people and get, and also just funny. I mean, he just had the witty comebacks, if you, I've tried to do, some live TV, and I think I'm sort of funny, but then you watch his show and you're like, oh my God, he's consistently funny all the time. He always has the backhanded, comment, that's just like so distinct. And it's literally, I think, just his training was in those kitchens where that sense of humor worked, and somebody just put it on video.
Sure. I rewatched an episode that he did in Finland, and there's one part where he goes to a sauna with, I forget who the guy was from. I think it was maybe it was someone from the New York Dolls or one of the punk rock bands that he took with him.
It's like Iggy in a sauna.
Yeah, it was somebody like that. But then they were doing this they were doing this crazy cupping thing.
Oh yeah.
They were like cutting you before they did the cupping. So they did like it was almost like a barber in the 1800s where they did the bloodletting, with the cupping. Nice. And he's sitting on the table and he's doing all this, and he's just got this look on his face like, yeah, sure, I feel great. Yeah, this is good.
It's awesome.
It's just insane.
So I'm gonna turn these a little bit from these in industry folks to and he is in industry also, diners, drive-ins, and dives.
Yeah,
and how different that is, and that personality. Guy Fieri versus, I don't want to make it all compare and contrast, but you've got these folks that have been sort of, like you were talking earlier, who are sort of picked out to do a show.
Right.
Not necessarily with a grand background in food, although Guy Fieri does have a background in food.
Yeah.
Yes, right. But you get these...
And he lives that role.
Yes. Right? Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And you're putting these folks who really haven't worked behind in a kitchen or in a bar, and you're telling them to go see the world or the United States and tell us about your food experience. It's the everyman sort of look at things. Not necessarily bad, but very different than Zimmern, Bourdain, Dave Chang, we'll get to him too, and what they're trying to accomplish. Thoughts?
You lack the incisiveness, I think, often. And again, some of them, if you give them time, they'll get there, because the questions will begin and they'll start to get into the field. I always think there's a couple of the Food Channel people, although their names escape me. But they started out in like science or something and then jumped over to food years ago. Alton is a great example who no one would ever believe that he wasn't in food because he just took it by the reins and really explored it in his terms, which ended up being unique, certainly on the Food Channel. And, you watch his first couple of seasons and he has no idea what he's talking about. And now he's like an authority. So sometimes you just have to give people a chance. And he's also compelling. I mean, I think Alton does a great job. And Alton really, or his people, you go online and you look at a recipe and they're also good recipes. So he's really kind of pulled the whole package together. I think there was a moment when food and beverage got so big in this country and it got so hot that everybody who was doing anything was like, oh, I can speak to an audience if I do food. And they just threw everybody at the wall that they could think of. And I know a lot of people who got out at that time because it was like they were the bloggers, they were the stuff doing some interesting things. And then for people, let's say you're a cupcake blogger in 2004 and you're the most famous cupcake blogger. By 2010, no one's even heard of you anymore. And you've been buried by the next four people that were the cupcake bloggers. So a lot of some of the original really fantastic people that had been doing it for a long time just got out at that point. But that's kind of how, when there's attention on anything, I'm always wondering, when does the lens of food and beverage, this amazing world that my career sort of happened to coincide with America becoming obsessed with food and beverage. And I started out as a restaurant reviewer and got pulled into wine. Now I'm doing cocktails. And, in 2016, when the publisher came to me and said, we want to do a cocktail Bible, I laughed at them and I was like, been done, might be kind of at the end. And I was so wrong. I was completely wrong. We were at the beginning of it's at that point, then it's massive explosion. Certainly cocktails where, all the good restaurants had already were cocktail curious, but now, everybody has to have a cocktail menu. And people are interested in it. But I've always been wondering, if food slows down, if we've done as many chef's tables as we can do, if we've done as many, people going around the world eating as we can do, what happens when the light kind of moves to the next thing, whatever. I'm not sure what it is. I mean, we're always going to be interested in food and drink because it's something we all consume, but we haven't been this interested for the last 100 years. Are we going to stay as interested for the next 100 years?
Well, it would seem that the world is smaller. It's gotten smaller every, decade since the, last 100 years. We can travel all over the world, either by our computer or by an airplane or some method. It's not going away. There's always this need for humans to move, and we're all transitory in some way. And we all like to eat, and we all like to drink something. So I don't think it's going to go away. It seems like this is, and whether we want to watch it on TV, I guess maybe that's a different question. But we still want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. We have these Zoom experiences stuff. I know it's been interesting because there's a group of, I guess, former travel writers that are basically arguing that there's no such thing as travel writing anymore. But I'm wondering if the pandemic proved that wrong. I mean, I always believe that novels and movies are all about place and setting anyway, and character. So travel writing is just kind of a specialized genre of what's happening in a story anyway, which always has to have a place in a setting. When I was writing restaurant reviews, part of the reason why I loved it was because I was really interested in fiction. And in a restaurant review, you have place, setting, character, drama, and then the food is part of that, and that's the critic element. But really, people are reading it for the stories about people. And I think to go back to somebody like Bourdain, his genius was that his story arcs are just phenomenal. His story arcs are little episode arcs. So I think that people that are telling stories, and I think that is really the line between the celebrities and the not celebrities, is you have to have somebody that can dig for plot lines and dig for character lines. And when you watch, Tony by the end became this incredible interviewer, and he could really nail somebody's character lines and ask questions of them that you're like, wow, is he going to get away with that question? But he did. By the end, he was quite ferocious with people about a number of issues.
Much more surly at the end.
Yeah, he really got surly about class. Between the kids at the back of the house and the people that were dining, he really got surly. I saw him get very surly in his Jamaican episode when he got really angry about the fact that all of the beaches were privately owned and people that live on Jamaica can't even go to them. And he had some. His Lebanon episode is pretty famous for that.
He was telling socio-political stories.
Yeah, and
on the CNN show.
Yeah, all told,
more than before.
All told through the point of view of this guy who should be this cynical jerk, but really has a serious moral compass that everything is looked through.
Totally. A little more happy look of life is someone like Phil Rosenthal, TV guy, creator of Ray Romano's show. Yeah. And all of a sudden he's a food guy and he's got a food show. So
I find it less compelling because it lacks the drama. And also I have a dead cold heart. So I need somebody to go around the world with that same sort of...
Well, you could have fooled us. I'm not buying that dead cold heart thing. I'm not buying it. You're laughing way too much.
I'm always like, oh, well, that guy's for the cheap seats that wants the checkered tablecloths and the romance.
This is another subgenre of this whole thing is you have food lovers. Why do we go on vacation? What's the compelling thing we go for? Why do we go?
The draw. I don't care about beaches. I'm there for the food and the drink.
Yeah, exactly. Phil Rosenthal is that same kind of person.
Right.
So he is another everyman. He may not know how to cook like Anthony Bourdain, but he knows how to vacation like you and I. We want to go to Dublin and find a good bar or a good restaurant and enjoy that. And he's good at that. And I don't think he professes to be a professional.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right?
He's a goofy guy.
He's a goofy guy, and he's a nebbishy, and he wants to kind of put that on film in front of us, right? And that's okay too. But he in no way is trying to tell that story of, I should say he's kind of moving that way a little bit, it seems like, in his second series. There's a little bit of trying to become Bourdain-ish, and that's a whole different conversation of guys who aren't Bourdain who want to be Bourdain. And
don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. Don't let your publicist or your producer push you that way, because you can't be it.
What are we on, episode 4 or 5 with Stanley Tucci? And there's a little bit of that going on too.
But, I mean, he left this just incredible outsized influence, and it's really hard to, even so. When I was going around the world for this book, and I had kind of, after college, I think is when Tony's shows first started, and I was really into them in the beginning, and kind of the bigger he got, I kind of floated away. So I actually ended up, after he passed, going back and watching the remainder of pretty much everything that I had missed.
Well, the hard thing with him was that they kept changing networks. First he was on Food Network, then he was on the Travel Channel. Then it's like, where do you find him?
Yeah. I know. Where do you find him? I know. Well, and that is, again, because he didn't fit any formula. So I think he kept running afoul of, to any exec, that show looks like it shouldn't work. And yet he connected with people on such a level that it was wild. I mean, I kind of get it from being inside the food and bev stuff that, I mean, even for me, like, is somebody really going to give me a show? Why? Well, what to them, it's like, who's his dad? Is his dad famous? And was he on The Bachelor? Then why? I mean, why? And that is like really that ridiculous. And Tony was somehow able to break through that. He had a best-selling book, really helped. New Yorker behind him, really helped. He had, the New York TV station behind him, really helped. And then his producers were phenomenal. So, his first teams were really good and really pulled, I think, a lot of his personality out and got that show off the ground. Everyone's trying to find the next Tony, and yet they're totally unwilling to
take a chance
somebody and nurture them to the point where they can become that.
Kitchen Confidential was like late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, early 2000s.
So it was only not only, but it's a 20-year career.
Yeah, 20 years career.
Which, really is not that long. And he really, the scope of work was incredible.
Yeah.
And but that's such a short period of time.
I know. He came to it late. I think he was in his 40s. He said when everything kind of happened for him, and it happened overnight. But, it's also like, it's so funny because in food and bev, it's sort of like, oh, well, if you really want to make it in this industry, you got to get on the TV. And and the people that I know that are on TV, it's like, be careful what you wish for, because to go back off is failure. I'm thinking of somebody like Emeril, who's still fantastic, but he's not as visual because he's not doing the TV as much. And I think people are like, oh, what happened to Emeril? Like, well, nothing happened. He just isn't on TV anymore. So it becomes this thing where it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that once you're on TV, you can't get off without somebody thinking that you're now not successful.
Right.
And I think Tony ended up on that treadmill, which to a kind of a tragic end where he felt like he couldn't take a break.
It's tough to, you put yourself in a box.
Yeah.
Box of television, and it's tough to get out of. And then you have to keep being different.
Look at Gordon Ramsay, who I have unbelievable actual respect for. And people really despise him because, he like yells at people and does this shock stuff. But Gordon's genius is discovering that restaurants have less to do with food and all to do with personal drama behind the scenes. And I kind of watch that show because it's great, because it's like every restaurant that fails is the same. There's always two partners. They're fighting it out. No one's talking. It's like a bad marriage. It's the same episode every time with new characters. But I find it really funny and compelling. But people can't stand Gordon. And he keeps having to reinvent himself. He was the yelling, swearing guy. Now that's not cool. So now he's got to do this and that. And he really did, I think, get himself into a box where he was supporting his empire with, TV money. Then you're in trouble.
I think John Taffer is the same way.
Yeah.
They all have the same 5 problems, and usually it's family and right? and money and or lack of money. So going from Anthony Bourdain, it's sort of, there's a direct lineage, of course, to Dave Chang.
Yeah.
He was obviously in Cook's Tour, or Mind of a Chef. I think he was Mind of a Chef.
Yeah, it was Mind of a Chef. I think he was the first season of Mind of a Chef. It was about David Chang.
And now Chang is this conglomerate in his own right. And he doesn't have a cooking show. He travels. It's 2 or 3 shows, Ugly Delicious and Breakfast, Lunch, and Dinner. Yeah. He is on the move. He is all over the world.
Yeah. And then he's got the podcast.
He is just all over the place. But going back to what you just said, Ange, about the podcast, he's also morphed into this is not going to sound fair to Dave because I do like him, I do respect him, a mini Bourdain. He's becoming more socio-political. He's becoming more looking at the broader world. Whereas he's not just walking around Tokyo looking for a great ramen shop. He's more than that now. He's a restaurateur. He's a businessman. He's looking at his own failings in life, and he's like an industry, of course. And that of course is tough to deal with when you become bigger than yourself. So, thoughts on Dave Chang and Dave Chang shows. And let me add. I think his shows are really entertaining. The Ugly Delicious it's fun to see him as this somewhat dopey kind of like American fumbling around in these foreign countries.
I thought the first season of Ugly Delicious was really good. The second season, it depends.
Sophomore-itis.
Yeah, it almost got too, for lack of a better word, like not so much him. I think he was fine, but some of the folks that he brought on, it got a little douchey, for lack of a better word.
Yeah,
it just got to be a bit much. Like there was the episode in that steakhouse in New York, and they're traveling to the guy in Australia who's doing all this crazy fire stuff with the steak.
Oh, right, yes.
I was like, really, come on, man, I just want a steak. I just want a steak. Give me a break.
So that's that interesting bridge you have to debate whether you're going to cross or not. Or do you want the everyman look at things, or do you want to look for that weird little restaurant in the middle of the Amazon that no one's been to, right? And who are you and what are you?
I feel like we're definitely in a moment in food, and I think David Chang was in the middle of this moment of, there was a lot of doing crazy stuff for crazy sake. Unless you have a really good and refined lens, it's really easy to go down that road because producers are always going to push you to somebody who's got an 8-foot column of fire and doing the only thing that this person is doing on the planet. Mm-hmm. And I think, Zimmerman's in there a little bit too, where he's always kind of have to be the shock jock eating something wacky. And I think Bourdain, what was interesting about him is he started out as that and very quickly realized that that's not the dead end he wanted to be in. And also he didn't want to be in the dead end of douche either. And you see him in a few restaurants just being like, yeah, let's cut this short. Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
He doesn't say that, but he does. And I think, some of the David Chang stuff is like, well, this is the coolest person on the planet doing this. And the producer says to do it. And so we're going to do it and show it to you. And then as the audience, we're kind of like, dude, no. And I think there's a lot of him never really knowing who Dave Chang is, And
I think that's something he's wrestling with.
He's just pairing up with everybody cool because that's how it's done now.
The beauty of his podcast, though, is I think it brings out more of...
it
kind of brings it more down to earth.
Yeah.
Because he's got just a couple of his friends on, and he just brings in a special guest every once in a while. And they all kind of work together in the Momofuku Empire.
Yeah. And I would argue fatherhood has changed him.
Yeah.
So I would be. It does. Lord, he knows it does.
I think it's the medium. I think TV is really hard, and you're kind of keeping those eyeballs and the attention span of the sport so short. I love radio. I love going on radio. I love going on podcasts. Radio people read books because they want to hear the whole story. And something, you're in your car and you hear something and you're like, God, that was just so interesting. And it had some depth and it was fascinating. So some of that's just medium, and it's kind of interesting to see this explosion of podcasts, which, can descend into a bunch of people sitting around chuckling. But a lot of times you sit there and listen and it's like, wow, I never would have known any of that or heard any of that in any other way.
One of the interesting aspects of Chang in the pandemic is how they've tried to stay relevant and stay
afloat.
Afloat. Well, this is completely different. Not even actually afloat. Well, maybe there's a connection with afloat and dollars and cents. But he's been, as we've all been stuck at home, we're all looking for outlets. He's been interesting on Instagram for posting videos of himself cooking at home.
Yeah.
Like regular food.
Regular
not even
food.
Complicated. How to make rice.
Yeah. And hats off to him for that. Because, during the pandemic, it was really clear to me in the beginning that there was a million, just in my little neck of the woods, people don't know when to stir and when to shake cocktails. I do programs all across the country in sophisticated places, and people just don't know when to shake and when to stir. And that always surprises like the cocktail cognoscenti, the editors of the magazines and the big bartenders, and they're like, well, my customers know when to shake and stir, and like, no, they don't. And they're having this conversation about molecular cocktails and all this stuff, which is fantastic. But people just don't know the basics. They don't know that vermouth needs to go in the fridge and it goes bad. They don't know that you need to change out your ice or it's going to smell like your shrimp bag. Like, these are just basic stuff. And I'm really, hats off to David Chang for, I would go on there and he's just like, I'm making ramen with some cheddar cheese.
It's all we have. It's all we have in the
because
in the fridge,
and it's okay.
It's okay.
Yeah. It's
so
okay.
Why? And I love him complaining about how, because I think he was living with some other family at the time in Los Angeles, and he could not keep like cheese. I get cheese sent here like every day, and these people are eating cheese all the time. I'm cooking more now than I ever cooked in a restaurant. I'm cooking for like 8 people 3 times a day, and he's got the baby, and the baby needs food. I actually kind of felt bad for him. It felt like a lot of work. And he's like the only one cleaning the kitchen, and he's trying to hold a camera while he's like, making eggs, and what the hell?
He's an interesting one. He's definitely a work in progress. There's definitely just a restaurant to television fame route that you're supposed to have, and he went through being the darling child and then having some TV exposure, but really expanding into multiple cities and then TV. So he's gone this media route, but you can definitely tell that he's wrestling with it.
And you know what's great about him? He's only 43. So there's a lot of room for him to grow.
Yes. Yeah.
So I'd be curious to see where he goes.
And I think he's hitting that, 40s, mid 40s era where he a lot of self-reflection. And
I'm 43.
Where am I? Who am I? Exactly right.
We
all been there.
43.
Yeah, 43 as well. It is a weird time.
So we've actually talked all about food and travel here with these shows. We haven't talked about alcohol. So there's a couple shows that I know. If you guys seen or not. One is Booze Traveler.
Yeah.
One is Three Sheets.
Yeah.
Which actually I really liked Three Sheets when it was
Three Sheets was a great show. That was
really good.
Yeah.
And the Three Drinkers Do Scotch Whiskey, which is on Amazon. So those are 3 that I know of that are kind of like alcohol specific. They're not about food necessarily. There's a little bit of food involved, but it's usually about bars and or distilleries or breweries or local drink. I wish that was a bigger area. I wish there was more shows like that. But I think there's probably some cultural issues to overcome in the TV world of, just, hey, let's go watch this guy get drunk in 50 different cities. I'm guessing that's a little bit of an issue, but maybe not. I mean,
it's an issue even for me to do book tours on TV. There's just so many shows that we don't do alcohol, or if we do alcohol, we do wine. Like, there's just no booze on TV. There's also just something about liquid that's just not as delicious visually. You just don't get the crunches. You don't get the garnishes are great. And I do think you could do a show these days about, some of these really presentation style cocktails that are really
like
beautiful.
A whole tiki culture kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Some interesting stuff. I mean, I just think that drinks are more interesting than ever. But I do think in the past, it was like, you've got clear or brown liquid going into somebody's mouth. There's no, and if you watch food shows, there always really is that money shot of them eating it. Yep. And just don't have that same glug 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 behind a glass. Just doesn't have the same appeal. And I think there's something visceral that when we all watch TV and we hear something frying and see steam, we all go, oh yeah, I know exactly what that's like. But when we just watch somebody drink, we don't really relate other than like, now I want to drink. But
and as we all know that we talked about earlier, drink usually equates to community, to people gathering. Yeah. And it's hard even to kind of picture that. I mean, Cheers was our big, and no one really drank on Cheers, right? Too much. But here, you're right. It's not a visual thing. So you have to picture other things, the rolling hills of Scotland, the distillery, or what the street leading up to the bar. But the pouring of, and you can, how many times can you watch somebody pour Guinness?
I know. So I had a cocktail column for a while, and it was I had come from food writing, and it was like I eventually just started pinning lists of words up onto my board in front of my computer, because I'm like, the vocabulary for even writing about liquid, about beverages, is so much shallower than food.
Yep.
It's just, I mean, you can do good the good writers are doing analogies and interesting stuff, and the wine world has made it quite sophisticated. But for alcohol, for liquor, it's pretty shallow. I mean, the big joke is, like, as an editor, if you say refreshing in this article one more time, you're toast. You're out of here.
I thought rich and smooth were the bad ones.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, they're meaningless. They're just basically meaningless words.
That's why we stopped writing reviews of booze and start doing videos, because at least we could just tell some jokes or just break each other's balls all the time.
And I think that carries over into the show too. That like lack of language surrounding it,
right?
Like carries over into the visual, where it's like, well, there's just not as much to say. There isn't even a good wine show, and they have plenty of vocabulary. You know what I mean? I mean, there's good wine shows, but you know what I mean? There's not like a famous, I'm going to travel around the world and drink wine and go to wineries and stuff and walk vineyards. It's just, you think it could be done well, but
it's too bad, because as we know in our travels, and you're just doing this, that it is very, for lack of a better word, rich in culture, rich in experience, rich in community. And it is hard to translate that onto screen, into pictures. It's too bad, because I wish there was more. Look, we're in the nerdy little world of spirits here. And we, as you say, Angela, we're in a niche of a niche of a niche, right? Maybe the broader public doesn't care about running through 14 distilleries in a show, or going through 14 bars in a show.
Right.
We would watch that.
Right.
Because we're the niche-y ones.
We want to see it,
Right. And so maybe you have to dig pretty deep on the bottom of the list on the 4,000 shows on Netflix to find that one show for 12 people to watch. When I was doing some research about this, and I meant to do this a little bit because I'm on this foreign show binging thing on Netflix in 12 different languages. I wonder if other countries have tried to do the alcohol trip. You would think that some French writer or some Spanish writer wanted to kind of see the world, or see the country in Europe and travel around. I'd like to think that someone else has tried.
I have seen a few French travel stuff, and they do a pretty good job. I mean, they always are couching everything in so much culture, and they're usually the persona is really, compelling and educated. So the Brits are like that though too. I mean, Brits have great travel shows. It's like, let's go to India, but also I'm a PhD in history. You're like, what?
Were there any other shows you guys wanted to touch on in the travel food world before we pour another drink?
No.
We could pour another drink and then move on.
Yeah, we could do that too.
Let's pour the drink too.
Yeah.
So I'm moving on to a Cynar.
Oh, okay.
Which, I kind of grew up on this kind of stuff. So,
fantastic.
With Sicilian parents, between this and Averna, these were staples in the house. So
one of my best friends drinks Cynar and ginger.
Oh, okay. That's got to be good. Oh, ginger. You got ginger beer?
Like a double Cynar and ginger. Yeah, just either neat or on the rocks. It's fantastic.
Here it is.
It's aggressive, but fantastic.
I like it. I like big flavors.
I am drinking the more and more traveling around. I'm going to Australia. I'm drinking the Starward 10th Anniversary Edition Single Malt, and it's a whiskey with a 5, 52.0%.
Excellent. This does not have a 5. This has a 16.5.
Ooh,
so it's very low in alcohol. Very, very low in alcohol, but it doesn't start with a 5. You got to start with the 5.
No, we want things with starting with 5s or 6s.
Though I'm thinking anything based on artichokes starting with a 5 might be nasty. Maybe. I love artichokes. Don't get me wrong. I love artichokes, but maybe not like this. Hey, where'd he go?
He's getting his. He's nearby. He's getting his cocktail. He's like on level 4 of his.
I got lost in my booze collection. It's very dangerous for me to walk over there because I don't normally pick from it up here. So I'm like, oh, I forgot about that. I'm doing a little Foursquare 2007 from Barbados.
We liked it. Which one is that?
It's Barbados. It's the Exceptional Cask collection.
I've had a couple of the funky rums, and I do like them.
Yes, right?
What's the one from? Which is the Jamaican one? Is it Long Pond or what's the other one?
Long Pond and Worthy Park. Hamden's. Hamden's.
That's it. Hamden's. You gave me. I think you gave me a Hamden's, Aaron.
I have a Hamden's
Foursquare.
Delicious.
Oh, it was awesome. I'd put that up against almost any Scotch.
I think we might have the same one.
It's a slippery slope between the whiskey and the rum, the good rum. They're dangerously tasty.
This actually was my second bottle of this. I haven't even opened this one. This one's a 59, by the way, and 59.
Oh, what was the one from Lost Spirits that time? They did that. It was the Navy rum with the Jamaican style rum, and it was like 72 or some kind of insanity.
68.5, I think.
Yeah, that was good though. That was actually really, really good.
Yeah, 59% alcohols.
Yep.
It's up
there. Good.
Yes, it is. So cheers again, gang.
Cheers.
Like,
chin chin.
So we've talked about food-related travel shows. Let's talk about just travel shows. Forget food for a minute. It seems go ahead.
The granddaddy of it all is Rick Steves, I think.
He is. I think he is, right?
I just remember, before there was Yelp, let's go Europe.
Yeah.
Or let's go Italy or whatever.
Right.
Well, I went to Italy when I finished high school in 1985. And I went for like 3 weeks. And I had family there. So I went and saw family, and I was a week on my own with some friends in Rome. All I had was a Let's Go Italy book. I had no internet. There was no phone.
Yeah.
Graduated college.
Advisor telling you to stay away from.
No, there was nothing. I went to Europe in 1990 with a friend after we graduated. We started in like late March and we came back in mid-May. We were gone for like 7 weeks just traveling around. Yeah. I had my Eurail pass. I had my Let's Go Europe book.
Awesome.
And that was it. Trying to make a phone call home in the middle of Spain. Not easy. My parents are like, where the hell were you? I couldn't find a phone. Sorry.
Oh, I remember traveling when I was younger and having like traveler's checks, Now people are like, traveler's what? I'm like, oh, yeah. You had to wander around with traveler's checks and you had to like find a bank that would cash them. It was
Carl Malden.
God, I remember the first time I went to another country and just popped my card into an ATM and I was like, this is it. Travel is amazing now. You just pop your ATM card in wherever you want in the world and out there was money with local currency. What?
But there was a certain joy in taking the ferry from like Dover to Oostende in Amsterdam, and you got about 20 pounds left. And there's like a little gift shop on the ferry.
The romance of being poor.
You end up with the 3-pound bar of Toblerone. And you get on the ferry. It's like I got cash to spend. What am I going to do with it? I'm not going to go exchange it and lose money. So I'm just going to eat
money from going around the world because I basically went 5 days to each city or country or wherever I was. So I had to time it really exact to get rid of my money.
It seemed like Rick Steves is probably not much older than, he's probably in his 60s, maybe? I seem to recall always catching one of his shows on PBS after I get back from a trip. Never before. You'd spend whatever on photos, and you go through that and you don't do 99% of what they tell you to do. Right. And you wasted $20 on the book.
Yeah, but you have to carry the book the whole time.
You carry the book the whole time and you wonder, why the hell am I carrying this?
Hey, but guess what though? You didn't have to worry about your 5G coverage and you didn't have to charge it.
True. Yes.
You just had to make sure you didn't lose it. That was the only thing.
But
also getting totally lost was part of the part of the charm.
Totally.
Now you don't get lost.
It's much harder to get lost now. Yes, this is true.
It is. That's half the joy. Like, just the crazy adventures. Like we just went wherever. We had our Euro pass. We're like, I've got 30 days to use this thing. We're gonna do whatever the hell we want. Like, hey, you know what? Let's go to Lisbon. That wasn't on the tour. Okay, well, we'll go to Lisbon anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
And the shows that are, I think, that are a little bit that way. And granted, you've got
a little more organic, if you will.
A little more organic. You've got a film crew, right? So it's not that organic. You're not really the guy's not out there by himself. He's got a contingent of people with him. Right. He's not falling off a cliff, like you might, literally.
Right.
His ATM probably won't have an issue and get chewed up by the machine like yours does in Glasgow. It's fun to find those shows that are more organic. I guess that's the more realistic, maybe. I guess, but it's also fun to see the shows that. Take you to see places that you may never, ever, ever, ever see in your lifetime up close. And I think that's what travel shows are really about.
Those winter months when you're sitting around and here we go, we're in the fjords.
It's funny you said that because I find those winter shows, the shows that are about winter in some place almost more fascinating than the summer ones.
I agree.
The Yellowstone Winter Show,
I agree.
where whoever's going there to talk about either bison or volcanic activity, I'm all over that. Or the fjords in Norway, or
well, that's on your bucket list, isn't it? The winter in Yellowstone.
Before the bucket is kicked, I definitely want to go there.
Bison in the snowstorm.
Yes,
it's a spectacular place. It really is.
It is spectacular.
Not a lot of great places to drink and eat, but it's just beautiful.
Bring your whiskey with you.
I never sit down to watch or pop on, Netflix to find a travel show. It's always by surfing. So that's how I come across Rick Steves or whoever. It's not something I would get, I'm going to watch this every week. That was never the case. It's just kind of following them, and then all of a sudden you can't turn it off. You're stuck watching something in Istanbul or something.
Yeah.
They're
mesmerizing. I mean,
mesmerizing.
Once you start, you can't stop. I like the ones that are really sort of have a discrete point of view or guest. One of my favorites is the Michael Palin on Trains. It's Michael Palin on Trains. We know what that's going to be, and yet he's really so good. And I guess that goes back to the celebrity and why some work and some don't. Like, you could just watch Michael Palin pretty much do anything, and it's funny as heck. And he's got a great personality, but he actually really pulled that show off. But I liked that it was, he's taking you through these trains, and he really does a good job of giving you what that view would be.
He's a travel fan.
Yeah.
He actually likes travel.
Yeah, he seemed like he genuinely told his agent, get me this job.
I actually think that, going backwards, I think Phil Rosenthal's a little bit that way too. He really does like food. He's not a cook. He's not a chef, but he really does like food. And he does.
I think he's genuine. I think he's, I think all of it is that and just the way he interacts with everyone and everything. I mean, he's got a genuine affection for what he's doing. I don't think it's just a money grab.
Travel shows have become, just like the food ones, they are celebrity driven and less, you said it, Ange, organic. It's Ewan McGregor traveling down to Patagonia or wherever he goes to. Let's just pick a guy who likes motorcycles and put him on a bike and see how far he can go.
Let's say that Netflix pitched, Clooney and Como, or Summer in Como with Clooney. Matt Damon would fly in, Soderbergh would fly in, all his buddies would be hanging around.
And you're just looking out at that terrace.
He's got somebody making him a risotto milanese and pouring Negronis. Negronis made with Casamigos tequila.
Of course.
Future sponsor of What We Watch When We Drink.
That's right. Hopefully. George, call us. He would be more Danish in a positive way because of who he is and what he does in his day job or night job, weekend job, trying to actually make the world a little bit better. I think he would be actually really interesting to watch doing a travel show.
Oh, I'm tuning in.
I would. Now, I don't know that I'd say that about Matt Damon, but he'd be kind of interesting to watch in a different way. We like celebrities, and we want to see them kind of be either real people, which when you're traveling, you kind of have to be a real person.
Well, I think it comes down to with Bourdain, he's a storyteller. And Clooney, I could see being a really good storyteller.
I totally agree.
And or someone like Cranston, you could see the ones that are really good at interviews. Yes. Cranston would be fantastic.
Yes.
Because he's a good storyteller and he's a compelling personality, and he seems like a decent guy too. So I think all that helps.
The show that I have a real soft spot for, because it sort of is a send up of all this, is The Trip with Bryden.
We just talked about this a couple episodes ago.
Yes.
And I watched it a couple weeks ago too.
I mean, each one of the films that they've made from it is not quite as good as the last one because the jokes tend to be similar, but they're still fantastic. And the first couple are just so damn funny. And coming from the world of restaurant reviewing, when the scenes where they're in the restaurant and they just don't give a crap about this 3-star Michelin food that's coming out, and yet it's coming out all fetishized like you're on Chef's Table. But they have the 2 celebrity hosts. They don't know why they're doing this. The producers don't know why they're doing it. It's just so oh my God, they caught it. They literally caught what all these shows are probably like behind the scenes. I love that show, actually. I find some of those movies, some of them hang together better as movies than others, but I find them really compelling.
It's interesting how and this is in the last 20 years, the advent of cable, how you have channels dedicated to travel, food, traveling food, food that travels. There is a channel for everything. Well, and there's multiple channels of food, and there's multiple channels of cruise ships and whatever. we like to see that.
I think to some extent what's interesting is some shows that aren't travel shows function as them. And I think that's partly why the Great British Baking Show is so popular. They did a genius job of realizing that people want to look at something lush and green in the wintertime. So they set that tent, in rural England. And every time the drone passes over the top of that English countryside, you're like, here we are, we're in England. And then it has all the great characters. And plus it has elimination, which Americans love. And, it's like Survivor baking tent.
What's great about it, and I'm not a huge fan of the show, it's okay, but it's civilized. This one's very, very civilized. It's like, okay, look, you could have done this better, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It's like how you'd want school to be in an ideal world, It's an escape, right? You're escaping into this safe, quiet, idyllic place.
I think you can make an argument that the food shows in general are really, in some ways, travel shows. Maybe you don't go to a kitchen very much. Right. Maybe you eat out every night, or maybe you're doing takeout every night, but you're going into a kitchen and seeing how some other person does what they do.
Yeah. Right.
They may be from a completely different world than you are from. They may be a foreign chef. They may be someone learning to be a chef, but they're doing something that you generally don't do. Yeah. And so you're actually going to a different place.
The greatest deep dive in terms of like a food film probably has got to be, it just popped in my head. Jiro Dreams of Sushi. It's soothing. It's like, it's, you just totally get immersed.
I feel like that's sort of the model for Chef's Table, right? That was the first kind of like, let's follow this man's passion. And the photography was like, let's use photography reserved for great fine art and great fine art lighting over this sushi. Yeah, it's such a beautiful, it's just a beautiful movie.
We could go back to your book a bit. So how do you game plan? How do you strategize going to these 40 plus cities? And do you research ahead of time that you're going to go to these X number of bars and I know what the bars are? Or do you get on the ground and you talk to people and say, hey, what's a good bar to go to?
A little bit of both. It was actually fascinating because the research for the travel almost was getting away, in the way of research for the book. It was, which sounds funny, but it was like, oh my God, I got to take on Kiev. Like I have shelves of all the travel books just to get my head around the towns. And then unbelievable, all my books have these like unbelievably giant spreadsheets. And basically I was reaching out to everybody I knew, checking people off. Hundreds and hundreds of emails to these different cities. And it really was like, some of the cities were really popping out and people were getting back to me. Other cities, people really weren't as much. So that played a part in how the book kind of came together too.
Did you use people here that who've traveled and say, hey, where would you go if you were in Kiev?
Yeah, exactly. And well, in that instance, it was really funny. The agent on my last book was Ukrainian, and he living in New York, and so he was like, "You have to go to Kiev, man." And I was like, "I don't know if it's really that, necessarily a major cocktail town," which it turned out it is really on the rise. So I actually ended up going to Kiev just because my agent wanted me to go, but they had already started a cocktail week there. So some of that is pretty easy to follow, like who's got the cocktail weeks, or, I'm not a big list ranking person. I don't really believe in the list ranks, but there's the world's 50 best. But what I do find it really useful for is you can go out to the world's 50 best lists and they have all the years that they've done it, categorized. And you can say, wow, 4 years ago, there was no Taipei anywhere on this list or anywhere on the nomination. Last year, there's 4 places. Taipei's on the make, So it was that kind of stuff of just like hearing about, what cities really have a crazy scene going on. And, a lot of times if there is a crazy scene and it's at least 4 years old, we're talking articles, we're talking people I can email who've written something in somewhere popped up, and I just reach out to the journalists and I'm like, hey, I'm going, where do I need to go, or finding the list. So, for the book, I really did want to get out of the really known, even Eater will do like the best places to go in Vienna or the best places to go in Budapest. So I was trying to get some cities where you don't really think of it as I feel like, for instance, the Philippines, where I found just a lot of action, and there's just not that many articles about it. And I'm like, well, that seems really deserving and interesting for my book then, So there's some stuff like that. But
what surprised you the most? Like, of all the places you were going to go, like you were like, okay, I'll put it on the list. Did anything really stand out? Like you really didn't expect to like it, but then you really, really did, or anything like that?
I guess I would put Kiev in that category. And Kiev really taught me a few things. One was that cocktails follow optimism and new economic opportunity. And it made me look back at the early 2000s and wonder what was the same about that generation that was creating these cocktail bars. But I landed in Kiev, and it's physically small, which I love because you can kind of bar hop. Mm-hmm. And you bar hop, and the bartenders were on fire, and you could tell that if you were anyone who is anyone in Kiev with any kind of money, you were going out for cocktails. And why was that happening? Why was that happening now? And why was it so good? And why was it so exciting? And that was a really fascinating little character study to sort of do. Mm-hmm. The other one that really surprised me, I was really terrified of Seoul, Korea, for a number of reasons. One was it was gigantic. It was one of the last of the gigantic Asian cities I was going to. And I was like, I'm going to die. By the time I am on this trip for 65 days, if I'm in Seoul towards the end, I'm just like facing a beast.
You mean just being intimidated by the size and what you can cover? Okay.
Size, what you can cover. Also, it's one of the cities where Google doesn't work. A lot of the American apps don't work. And it doesn't have our alphabet. And it's not, it just felt like, oh, shit.
This is a foreign city.
Yeah, this is for real. It's like I'm taking on Tokyo, but with I don't know anybody there. Tokyo has a long history of cocktails and a long history of back and forth with the United States. I've watched more shows on Tokyo than, we've all seen, Tokyo's like, I'm really excited to go. I understand it's a beast, but I got it. Seoul, so much less. I landed. It was so easy. It was such an amazing cocktail scene. I had such a wonderful time there. I'm so bullish on Seoul. It's one of the, if you told me, where should I go for vacation for 5 days and just stay in one city? I'd be like, Seoul's probably in the top 3. Everything was walkable. And when you do take the subway, it's better than Tokyo's, I would say. It's one of the most amazing public transportation systems on earth. And so something like that really shocked me. And the Koreans are fascinating because they're newly extraordinarily wealthy, right? Every brand that we think of as being an Asian brand, well, was a Japanese brand. Well, in the last 10 years, South Korea has eaten their lunch, right? So Honda, now it's Hyundai, and so there's a lot of money, and it's a young city. I find a lot of the Asian cities are very young, which makes for an incredible cocktail scene. And it was great because I'd spent a long time in the Midwest. And Korea is very Midwestern. It's cold, and they drink like fish. And they're just being introduced to the cocktail, and they're going bonkers with it because they have money and they have a huge drinking culture anyway, and they have a huge food culture surrounding drinking, so that you get trashed and then go have hot pot, or you get trashed and you have Korean barbecue. Seoul, Korea is like the best place to go get smashed.
You'll never get past 50, but you're going to have a great time.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly. And it's cold, but you're going to have a great time.
It seemed like you had some mini goals within your goals. The one I kind of liked, and we've talked about this on the podcast recently, actually, is trying to find local spirits. And then how are they using a cocktail? Most every place you go to in the book, you're trying a local spirit.
So it was definitely a bit of an agenda because I'm always looking for the people that were trying to work with local materials and do something really fascinating, and not just fascinating for me, but I just think fascinating in general. You can land in Seoul, Korea and go stay in a hotel and drink at a hotel bar. They might have a couple cliche things from local, but you're not really going to get digging in there. And I really wanted to find people that were really getting in there. And I took that as kind of a sign of maturity within the cocktail scene in the same way that it matured in the United States, where, when craft cocktails first started rolling across, we basically just got classes. We got New York classics. And then Chicago was like, no, we're going to do it our way. Or Los Angeles, which very quickly was like, no, we're going to do these cocktails West Coast. And, you know, LA has a lot more like mezcal and tequila going on. It's got very site specific very quickly. So I was interested in people that were doing that kind of stuff for sure. And some cities have bars, you know, that are collecting local indigenous ingredients and pushing indigenous booze. And I find that cocktails are a great way to explore culture, actually, because the bartending scene and people that are into booze and cocktails are inquisitive people. And I feel like we like, just in general as a tribe, we like to dig into stuff. And I was really richly rewarded by hunting up those people around the world.
So if you did a food show, you'd want a sense of place. Okay, if you're in Philly, you know, you're going to get a roast pork with broccoli rabe and provolone. And a Schmitz.
And you're going to talk about Amaros because of the huge Italian community here. You know, you're going to
you want to get that sense, and it's going to come through in the cocktails because it still goes with food.
Polizzi Social Club, you know, a few blocks from my house, amazing restaurant, new restaurant, and they're going back to the old club drinks, and they have like an incredible olive oil martini, you know, which kind of died out like in the 70s, but they brought it back in a great way because that's what the Italians were drinking in the 50s and 60s. Awesome. That's what I'm looking for. You know, that if you're coming to Philly, have that drink. And that was the kind of thing that I was looking for.
The other part of the book, as well as Booze and Vinyl, is the food part, which I go back to a couple recipes in Booze and Vinyl.
Oh, awesome. That's great to hear.
The coleslaw, that's my go-to coleslaw. And as you can see, I've, you know, tagged all kinds of pages in your book. The ones on top of the food ones, the cocktail ones are here. So talk about the food for a minute and finding food, culturally specific foods or geographically specific foods.
Yeah, culturally specific foods and culturally specific things that go with drinking. And I love it because it helps contextualize the drinks. And it's interesting, like in Asia, for instance, you get, at a certain point, you cross this, like I call it kind of the daiquiri line. And everything, once it heats up and you end in a city that's really humid, man, everything's some version of a daiquiri. It's got a lot of juices in it.
And the mason jar daiquiri line?
Oh, yeah. What did you say? Yeah, exactly.
The mason jar daiquiri.
The mason daiquiri line? Is that what
Mason daiquiri line. But it's really fascinating with these hot weather climates and the food that they eat and the spice and the acidity. And I love food, and I love that you love the food from it because actually the next book that I'm working on is a global cocktail food book, mostly food with a few drinks. So it's going to be opposite. It's like over 100 food recipes of what people around the world eat with mixed drinks. You know, more than Italian aperitivo, like lots of Asian stuff. Right. I found, one bizarre example that I've gone on this insane deep dive on is Armenia. Middle Eastern, but Christian, so it drinks. So all the meze and stuff. So just strange stuff like that. Obviously, Israel drinks too, and that's why it ends up in the book. Israel, Lebanon. You know, I'm fascinated by the countries that are on the border of the no drinking zone. The other one that was interesting was Budapest, which finally answered the question of what to do with Slivovitz.
Talk to me, baby. Talk to me.
Which is got a lot of that. Put it with ginger beer. So they do basically Schliv and ginger. And they use everything. Over here we know the plum, but they're big on apricot. They're big on a few of the other fruits that are really actually incredible. So that's in the book as well. That's by a gentleman named Zoltan Nagy, I believe, who was like, well, obviously you put it with ginger beer. And I'm like, not obvious. One of my favorite products in the whole book, and one that I think everybody who cocktails should know about, and I'm really bullish on it, is sort of this plum syrup from Korea called Mazelwonek. I mean, that's my horrible obliteration of the word.
We do that all the time.
Yeah.
Bilingual.
I mean, I think I looked at it at Google once, and it told me how to, the Google, how do you say this? And it was still like, yeah, I can't say that. I literally, my mouth doesn't form it that way. But it's like, it's got just like this hint of acidity. You don't need to do anything. You don't even need to add citrus. And I think I do it in there actually with scotch. So I make this scotch plum flip. So it's egg, I think maybe a little cream because the Koreans love cream in cocktails. They love creamy things. So it's just ready-made product that can just go into cocktails. So there's some wacky stuff.
It is interesting how you can now find these things from all over the world in your backyard. It's made the world a lot smaller.
It's made the world a lot smaller. And also really, especially in the US, we have such amazing access to strange ingredients like we've never had before. And, it's remarkable because, and going back to the food and booze pairing, you can go to like a Trader Joe's and find a crazy bottle, but then you can go on and find the hot sauce. You can find, these things that really help contextualize it. And you can really travel at night at your dinner table, to a different country. But I do it some. I mean, I'm always cooking from all over the world, but I don't really like style out the whole thing. I do Spain. I'll do the pan tomate. I'll get a cold bottle of manzanilla sherry. I'll get the olives. I'll get the almonds. There's a few countries where I'm like, I need to go there tonight.
and what we've discovered lately,
yeah,
the Spanish and the Portuguese, they've got the tin fish market.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That is just
totally.
like,
I remember landing in Lisbon and there was this store devoted to tin fish. And I was like, what's that all about? And the woman was like, oh, you don't know about Portugal and tin fish? You can go in there and not just find the tin fish, but they have like the tin fish aged going back.
Yeah.
It's
amazing.
Tin fish. And I was like, oh, okay.
It's amazing.
I love this. Oh, yeah.
It ain't cheap, but you know what?
No.
It's cheaper than a trip to Portugal and Spain.
Sure is.
And it tastes just as good.
And you can get a pretty good selection at Whole Foods or, whatever, right?
Zingerman's, future sponsor.
Or Zingerman's, right? That's right. This is true.
God knows they've been taking a lot of my money over pandemic. I've discovered the love of Zingerman's over the last 12 months.
I know. Well, and that too is another way of traveling, right? Because you can now have things shipped to you from wherever.
Yeah.
And I just ordered some stuff from Momofuku. There's Goldbelly. You can get stuff from all over the country into your kitchen. We're making that world a little bit smaller by the new world order of internet shopping.
And that's fantastic because I do feel like, and in a couple of the books, like in the new cocktail hour, we have a section on cocktails for takeout and that you pair with takeout. And I do find that, I mean, like some of the drinks, certainly in Booze and Vinyl, some of the food in Booze and Vinyl is fairly simple on the feeling that we're taking a lot of work on some of these cocktails. Not in Booze and Vinyl as much, but some of, new cocktail hour and movie night menus, even we're making classic cocktails. So I don't want to wear people out where they have to feel like, oh, I got to make this whole meal, which is complicated. And then I also have to make cocktails, which are more complicated. So I love takeout. I love takeout with cocktails. So if I'm having takeout, I will do take the cocktails to the nth degree, because I have the time while I'm waiting for the takeout to arrive.
Where'd you say you are again?
Not far from you.
Hey, how's this? I'll bring the barbacoa. You make the cocktails.
There you go.
How about that?
Here's the deal.
I'll get the cheese spread from the Bruno's. I'm in.
Yeah.
I want to go back and talk a little bit about your last book, Booze and Vinyl, because vinyl is a love for me. Started off very early and then college working at a record store, and I've always been a vinyl lover. And this was like this wonderful melding of these two things that are loves for me, drink and music. Talk about your love of drink and music.
So my father's a musician, a violinist, and we grew up, my sister and I wrote that book together, and we grew up with a turntable in the middle of the house, and I remember growing up being young, and part of coming of age was being able to put a record on the record player, right? I'm like 5 years old, and it's like, okay, you're not going to screw it up. So it was a big part of growing up in our house was there was always music playing. And my parents had come from New York, and they were always having sort of people over and listening to music. I just got lucky in that way because it was kind of a holdover. I'm not sure that people were doing that as much because compact disc came along fairly soon afterwards. I went on to DJ in my misspent youth, and I DJ'd vinyl. I was also a musician myself. I was a bass player. The thing that struck me about vinyl and cocktails is I love the cocktails for the history and for kind of all the material parts of them. I like cocktail people because of that too. And the thing with vinyl is that same tactile quality. And I just caught the tail end of it. But even then, when it was just vinyl, for one, somebody that you knew bought vinyl and you went over their house to listen to it. We didn't all buy the same record. And I think, people don't remember what media consumption was like back in those days. It was very difficult, right? And it was communal. You listened to albums together. And you almost never listened to albums alone the way that we do now. So everything was different. But what really struck me was that these are both of these sort of analog things that have come back from the past. I sort of think of cocktails as being analog. And I sort of think, because you can just open a White Claw these days. But you got to make that dang thing. And it's like, an art form. And or at least a craft, for sure, a craft. But also with the vinyl was when you bought that thing, you're suddenly part of this community that also owned that record. And like the album art when it would fall out, and you have the poster and then your friend would put the poster up. And it became part of their life. And also it was funny because while we were writing the other books, we'd be listening to vinyl and we're like, gosh, the sides of these albums are perfect length for drinking.
It's true.
Make yourself a cocktail and float away for the next 30 minutes. Make yourself another cocktail, flip it over, and float away again for another 30 minutes.
And it was nice the way you paired it, like, the A-side cocktail and the B-side cocktail.
Yeah. I'm a huge proselytizer for cocktails and for good music or for anything of quality, really. We tried to just get people involved. So that's why there's so many different types of music and genre in there. We wanted people to be able to open up that book and be like, I'm not a whiskey person, but I really like this album and it has gin, so I'll try this. I'm always trying to get people like, you'd think you don't like this, but you do if you just give yourself the chance to. And same with music, if you just give this thing a listen, and you're probably going to like it because everyone else does. It was just a nice blend of two worlds. And it was fascinating. Just to finish it quick, it was really fascinating because we started that. Books take forever. So we probably started in 2017, I want to say. And before even vinyl really vinyl was already back, but the really bad year, I think, for vinyl was like 2008. That economic dip really killed off the most record stores. Then the ones that were going to survive through the teens. But 2017 was kind of an interesting year. We could not have predicted that vinyl would go on to explode the way it did. It was kind of just a bizarre timing. It was like Booze Cruise, just the weirdest timing.
You got to be in the right place at the right time.
That one was fun because we got together with Crosley Turntables, which makes the little record players that go under people's beds. They sell I don't know how many millions of those little things a year. So they've gotten a lot of people into vinyl. And they basically gave us a mobile listening van, and we drove from New York City to Nashville. But people of all generations would come on this van. It was so heartwarming. Grandpas would come on with their grandchildren, and they'd be like, oh, let's put on Prince, and people would be dancing in the van. You're like, this is kind of amazing that vinyl has been able to survive in this age.
The analog thing is very, like you said, tactile, right?
Yeah.
You can touch things, you can drink things, you can hold the glass. Every glass is a little bit different. It's a very, very touch-oriented thing. Yeah. And you can smell that record. You literally can smell the age of it. You can the liner notes are someone's real words that they wanted to pass on about the experience of making this record. Much like a cocktail book, or much like watching a bartender make a drink. You really get that sense of being there with that musician or that person making it. It's different with a CD. It's different with a streaming album.
Yeah, and also the vinyl is so fascinating because these artists wanted to they were really tied to that format. And so they have an artistic statement that lasts over time instead of these snippets that we hear off Spotify.
There's a I'm not sure if it's there now, actually, because of the pandemic. There's a bar in Hollywood called Sunset and Vinyl. Get it? Sunset and Vinyl.
I do know that place. I do.
And it's upstairs on top of a pizza place. And it's a small little bar. I'm not sure what was there before, but there is a turntable on the bar.
Yeah.
And they have a cabinet of records, and you can choose a record to put on, and you have to get in line, put your.
So great.
It's mesmerizing, actually, to watch a record get actually put on and a needle get put on the vinyl and just watch it spin.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden there's music coming out of some speaker somewhere. It is, if you're not used to that, I can only imagine what a 20-year-old might think about that nowadays.
Those were the days.
Yes.
Yeah,
and then they're making craft cocktails right there for you. So it's a combo experience. And I think there's a fair amount of bars that kind of do that.
It's such a great way to make community, and I'm really glad that bars have kind of taken on some of that vinyl. I mean, if you think, we used to have record stores and bookstores and comic stores, and now all of it's been replaced by stuff online. And there's community online. I'm not saying there isn't, but I don't know how many albums I found that I love just by flipping through and looking at album covers, and I just bought it because I liked it. Or that literally the stranger next to me would be like, that's awesome.
So now what's up? Things are opening up a little bit across the country.
Yeah.
Where does the promotion go from here? Where now the book's coming up in a month or so?
Good question. I think it's still going to be mostly online. The official position is no physical events. So some Zoom stuff. The publicity is magazines and interviews and stuff like that. And then I'm going to start doing some happy hours. But I'm going to take people sort of through parts of the book and at least introduce them to some of the weirder bottles.
Well, we I think, on first pass of this book, as you can tell, my little book is already ready for me to start chopping through it. I'm excited about it and love Booze and Vinyl, and this is going to be really fun too. Booze Cruise, a tour of the world's essential mixed drinks from Andre Darlington, and it's coming out to all your favorite book places in about a month, right?
Yeah, about a month.
Yeah, this is really exciting.
Little over 40 cities. There's a bunch of food in there and a bunch of information about even traveling once we're able to travel to different cities.
It's in some ways it's great timing, right? Because we're kind of opening up again, and I think the travel industry are going to explode before you know it. And you are on the cutting edge here, sir.
You've laid it all out for us.
You did. Well, we want to thank you for spending part of your evening here talking about this and TV and drink. This is a very exciting time, and we wish you wonderful luck with the book.
And hopefully we'll have a chance to have a drink together.
It was a real pleasure talking to you guys. It was fantastic. I always love talking about TV and drinks and music and everything. So
perfect.
You guys had a great show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Where can we hear this thing, Ange?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Audible, and boozdancing.com. And by all means, email us at boozdancing@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you.
It was a wonderful little visit to the rest of the world.
Thank you, guys. This was really fun.
Cheers.